What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, we get to talk about Dragon Age: The Veilguard. They showed the 20 minutes of gameplay, and actually, not even just that. We got a couple hands-on impressions, articles, and videos, and just a lot of people talking about it afterwards. And that stuff actually seems a bit more positive than what I've seen for the gameplay. We'll talk about what I feel of the gameplay, but I was even reading through as many of the hundreds and hundreds of comments as I could on the YouTube channel. Seems kind of split. Seems like people maybe are, at least some people, not so willing to go with the direction that Dragon Age is going, but also a lot of people very excited or just excited to see Solus and characters like that again. So there was a divide, but again, I would say the impressions afterwards, whether it was the character creator or just, BioWare being back. I think Video Games Chronicle specifically said that, BioWare's back. And a couple other tidbits, the game actually seems pretty linear. It sounds like there's gonna be a couple of, bigger areas to walk around and explore, but it seems like the entire game is more mission by mission. And even what we saw really does remind me of Mass Effect, maybe even how you handle your characters. Dragon Age Inquisition as well, but it gives me Mass Effect type vibe, where it's a little bit more linear. The companion system, I think, reminded a lot of people when it was first announced of Mass Effect. So yeah, honestly, what we've heard afterwards sounds pretty exciting, especially, I would say, more of the mission-to-mission things. The rumor surrounding that, by the way, is they don't want to waste people's time. They want you to, just be engrossed in it and not necessarily have to wander, but if you wander and there's just nothing to do, right, that lowers the quality. So I like to hear that stuff. As for the gameplay trailer itself, well, one thing that I think immediately stands out to me is the dynamics of it, right? Well, I guess number one, it visually looks really, really good, and I'm very impressed with how they went back and forth between action and choices and talking, things like it seemed more, well, like I said, dynamic, where there weren't as many moments of characters standing around and the camera just switching back and forth. Now, different games do it different ways, and generally, I think people kind of know how to do it. It's just not implemented right in every game. You want to have a little bit of movement, even if it's just a situation where two characters are going back and forth, different camera angles, right? More than just one for each character. Maybe the character's kind of shuffling from, moving one area to the next. Something like that to kind of keep things a little bit, I guess, less stagnant, right? So that's something that immediately jumped off the page or the screen to me when looking at it is, okay, and maybe people would say the opposite, where it's well, I like to just get the lore and just have these characters talk and it be rather stationary. Look, I want a good story and I want good characters. I'm not disagreeing there, and I'm not saying that's not important, but I do think it looks like the more modern version of what you would probably expect the series and BioWare in general to do in 2024, right? Where there is a little bit more movement and things are kind of sandwiched in between, you do an action thing, you slide down something, there's a little cutscene, or you slide down into a combat. That was in the gameplay trailer, right? So that really stood out to me overall. The combat's a big one. I'll say that I generally like it. I think I did see a picture of the wheel with it kind of filled up. I think Michael Gamble actually put it on Twitter. It looks fine, I suppose. For me right now, it looks a little confusing. I also would just like to take a little jab at them that whoever was playing through it, I don't know why they had to show the wheel so many times. It's yeah, we get it. It's empty. There's nothing there, and you're just using one ability. So I don't know why they did that in the gameplay, but we did, like I said, see a picture of what it looks like later in the game. One thing I will say, and it has been brought up, but it's also kind of been addressed. So there has been talk about the companions, right? Now, one weakness I will say is the damage they were doing seemed next to nothing. And the damage they took, or enemy, awareness of them, was also next to nothing. Now, that was addressed a little in the gameplay. I believe at the 11-minute, 59-second mark, it basically says, because this is early on in the game, you have no control. So you're not going to be able to tell them what to do. You're not going to be able to switch, none of that stuff. You will. So that, I feel like, is going to be more like Inquisition, and it's just going to be, you can't do it right away. You can't do it when we saw it. So I'll say two things to that. Number one, I won't take it out on, I'm not going to get mad of like, well, hey, where's the character, control kind of buttons? Like, well, why can't I tell them what to do? Not going to get mad at that because literally that's just part of the opening of the game. The one thing I will be a little afraid of, and again, it can change before the game comes out, is that first thing I said. The awareness of the enemies to your companions didn't seem there. And there was a few instances where you would see like an arrow, somebody would shoot or somebody would fire a spell or whatever at an enemy, and it would be, one of your companions, and it would do very, very, very little damage. So, and the enemies only attacked you. They really only came after you. So I'm not thrilled with that. That's something that we'll have to see when the base game comes out, or maybe when it just gets closer. But, again, for gameplay, I said in the beginning, not everybody's on board, and I respect that. I think a lot of people want original Dragon Age, and they kind of left the series after 2, and then, Inquisition even took it further, right? Totally respect that. I get it. I really liked Inquisition. I've always been pretty vocal or just like honest about that. I'm willing to follow the gameplay. As I said, the gameplay needs to be something that, grabs you and keeps you going throughout the whole game with the, skills and abilities and your characters, or the other characters, I guess, right? Side characters. That's very important. Like, that's a huge part of an RPG like Dragon Age. But I will say, like, the story, characters, lore, things like that, also very important to me, and maybe, again, more important for a game like Dragon Age. My wife was even pointing it out when it came to, like, the visuals were good, but when it came to, like, the surrounding, it looks fantasy, but it looks more like modern fantasy, which I can absolutely see being, in fact, we were even looking at pictures, a pretty big departure if you look at some of, like, the structures and locations from all the Dragon Ages, but especially even, like, the first one. Again, they've continued to go down a path that I don't think is acceptable for everybody, and again, I totally understand that. It would be, or if it actually comes out this year, which, God, I hope it does, this would be one of my most anticipated games. Like, I think there's potential, and even more than that, there's a need. Like, BioWare, and we've talked about this, right? BioWare needs to nail it, and I think it was a good enough gameplay presentation. The original trailer, though, I would say not good. We talked about that maybe in the Xbox show. I don't know what that was. That was looking way too colorful, way too vibrant. It looked like, I don't know, in terms of, like, announcing the characters, it goes back to, like, that Suicide Squad thing. I'm not a big fan of that. It feels like the tone was very, very different between that trailer and what we just got today. So then the question is the rest of the game. Where does the rest of the game fit in with that tone? Is it too kind of like vibrant and upbeat and jokey and I don't know, like a ADHD, right? Like in your face? Is it like that? Because it could be. Or is it a little bit more, down to earth and the lore and the characters and stuff like that? So we'll see. I mean, that's the stuff that they really got to nail to be in order for us to really say BioWare is back. But I'll say that they did at least a good enough job to keep my interest. I think maybe to get several people at least watching or at least on board to the extent of like, okay, well, let's see about the next couple months. Let's see when this game gets closer if they can continue to keep people's interest. So there you go. There's my thoughts on it so far. Let me know in the comments what you think. Make sure you're subscribed, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.